The Marinade.
There's no O in Marinade. Let's try it one more time. Ready? 1, 2, 3.
The Marinade.
Marinade.
Bone marinade.
That's
The Marinade.
The Marinade. With Jason Earle. Welcome to The Marinade with Jason Earle, a free-flowing conversation about the creative process with creative people. This is episode 98, and our guest is Justin Corsbie. Justin is a filmmaker whose first feature-length effort is must-viewing for any film lover, and it is tailor-made for fans of The Marinade. Hard Luck Love Song was inspired by the Todd Snider song Just Like Old Times. Snider is, of course, a frequent subject of conversation on this podcast and is one of the most beloved guests in The Marinade's history. Hard Luck Love Song is a film in the spirit of The Marinade, not only because of the Todd connection. It's a work born of a fit of inspiration, an improbable explosion of creativity from a filmmaker who had a vision, big dreams, and an uncompromising will to make his work come to life. Justin Corsbie is that filmmaker, and I'm so excited for y'all to hear this conversation. Before we get to it, let's listen to the trailer for Hard Luck Love Song.
Hello?
That you, Cottontail?
Maybe.
You want to come over and have a drink?
You gonna put a little money on this?
I don't not gamble.
We got the house rules on the board over here. It's best 2 out of 3. But keep the action moving, okay?
Stay safe out there.
Looks like you fixing to run.
Nah, man, you got me all wrong.
ID. That's a Blockbuster card.
I don't like getting hustled. And things that I don't like wind up in a hole in the fucking desert.
I'm out here in the Philippine squalor. All I want to do is stomp and holler.
You know, I've been trying to track her down for over a year. She's important to me, man.
So you're still playing music?
Yeah, still banging away. You know, it's been really good to me.
Okay, that's amazing.
You gotta take good care of her.
Hey there, lonely girl. Have I got a lonely boy for
You are so talented. It's always just a matter of you pull it together. Once again, you have no idea what you are talking about.
you? Stop!
You need real help.
Come over here, you little shit.
I can't be another one of your situations.
Nobody ain't getting out till I let him out. Today, I ain't in the mood to let nobody out.
It's gonna be great. It'll be just like old times.
That's scary.
After a nationwide theater run, Hard Luck Love Song is now streaming on all major platforms. Click the link in the show notes to watch the film, y'all. Everybody, it is such an honor to bring you my conversation with filmmaker Justin Corsbie. See if that's any, is that any better?
Yeah, that sounds great here.
Okay, awesome. Cool. Thanks, Justin.
I heard you were a little under the weather. Are you feeling any better?
Thank you for being so flexible. Yeah, I'm a lot better, but I'll still have to turn away and cough a few times. I don't know. I think it's just allergies, but I did Americana Fest, Gasparilla Music Fest, and then I flew up to see the Drive-By Truckers in Minnesota 3 weekends in a row, and my body just isn't used to that. And I think it's just my body being like, pump your brakes, dude. That is
Absolutely.
Yeah.
I feel you. I'm surprised I haven't been hit with some sort of bug myself. We did Americana Fest, a little sneak peek of the movie during Americana Fest too. So
I know I was bummed I wasn't in town in time. I got the invitation, but I didn't get there till that night at like 9:30 I got in town. So, but man, the film is wonderful. If there was ever a film that was tailor-made for the Marinade with Jason Earle podcast, it's Hard Luck Love Song. based on a Todd Snider song. Todd's been a guest on the show.
Yep.
On a song that's from The Devil You Know, which was co-produced by Will Kimbrough, who's also been on the show. Michael fucking Dorman, who I sing the praises of every chance I can and talk about the genius that is Patriot every single chance I can on this show. The RZA, I mean, it just like everything that I could want from a film before I even got to see the film is all laid out there. And then you've written and directed this gorgeous film. I'm just crazy about it. I watched it twice and it's just absolutely beautiful, man. So thank you so much for your film and thanks for doing this.
Wow, amazing. Thanks for all of those kind words, and thanks for having me on. It sounds like you and I are living in the same Venn diagram of Michael Dorman, Todd Snider, and the RZA.
Yeah, I think we're going to have plenty to talk about. I think there's plenty to discuss. You know, I think I kind of want to go, if we can, into sort of, you're the first filmmaker I've had on the show, and I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit about like how you got into making films and going all the way back also to sort of like your childhood you're sort of there where the Texas heart-worn highways kind of scene is happening as a kid. And I'm wondering about like what that life was like growing up and like at what point did you kind of go, hey, I'm around all this creativity and my creative outlet looks like it's going to be film?
It's a really good question. Yeah. I've talked about this before, but for those of your listeners who maybe haven't heard anything else I've done or haven't read up on any of this stuff and any of the media hits that have been happening, I was born literally in a house, an air-conditioned house in the Clarksville neighborhood of Austin. And if you've seen Heart-Worn Highways, which I'm sure many of your listeners have, I was born a couple blocks away from that trailer where Townes Van Zandt is kind of holding court in half that movie. So
it's amazing.
Yeah, it was pretty amazing. It was a special time in Austin, obviously, at that time frame. That neighborhood in particular is a very, very interesting, rich, colorful neighborhood. And I, was raised there by this bohemian single mother poet, in and around that whole music scene. And her best friends, a couple of her best friends ran these singer-songwriter joints in Austin in the 70s and 80s. And I was literally like a little 5-year-old kid running around this place called the Alamo Lounge and this other place called Emma Joe's, watching Townes Van Zandt, Lucinda Williams, Butch Hancock, Jimmy Dale Gilmore, Joe Ely, that whole scene of people. And my mom was friends with all those people and is still friends with a lot of those people. And, she'd read poems kind of before they would play. And I literally got up on stage and like played bongo drums with Butch Hancock one time when I was like a probably 5 or 6-year-old kid or something at one of those kind of epic shows that he would put on at those places. So I was kind of immersed in that whole kind of roots music, kind of folk music scene at kind of a heyday time period kind of in Austin when that stuff was happening. I remember as a little kid watching Townes Van Zandt, Butch Hancock do song swaps and stuff like that at some of those places. Just really kind of, was able just as a kid, just be around that kind of, kind of bohemian kind of musician artist kind of scene in a, kind of a pivotal time in Austin. So that was super cool. And then kind of as I got a little bit older, there was this incredible like art rock, indie rock, punk rock kind of scene that was happening in Austin. And I was in and around that scene. If you've ever seen the movie Slacker, I was like a 10-year-old kid, skateboard punk kid, like hanging around the drag when all that stuff was going down and hanging out at Liberty Lunch, which was this kind of cool indie rock, punk rock kind of club in Austin in the 80s. In and around a different whole scene of music in that period. So I kind of, there's like, in the movie Forrest Gump, he's kind of around all these like pivotal kind of moments, obviously exaggerated, but I sort of feel like that a little bit in my childhood, kind of growing up in Austin around these kind of pivotal music scenes that kind of made Austin what it is from a music standpoint. And it really, it made a huge impression on me as a person, but also just as a creative. So music has always been like a real kind of touchstone for me for inspiration and just kind of how I live my life, honestly.
Mm. So how does that and then end up, you could have very easily, it seems like, in growing up in that scene, in those scenes, plural, and around those folks, you could have very easily kind of had music as your primary creative outlet. So how does it, when did you know I'm going to pursue the path toward making films, and kind of what was the spark?
Yeah. I took guitar lessons when I was younger. I tried, a little bit, but, didn't have the patience for it, probably, to be honest. So I can't play music to save my life. But I just enjoy it so much. It's such a, kind of important kind of creative spark for me. I would say, always very interested in music and in kind of artistic stuff. I wasn't the kid who took art classes and stuff like that. I had a lot of friends who were really good artists, painters and sculptors and, illustrators and whatnot. So I wasn't that kind of artistic, creative type kid growing up. But I was very much into films and music and literature and into art, and kind of more like soaking it kind of all in. I remember, I forget how young I was, pretty young. I have a brother who's, I think 13 years older than me. So I definitely was able to get exposed to a lot of stuff from him. But I remember seeing Clockwork Orange probably when I was an adolescent. And that probably was like the movie that kind of lit my fuse from a filmmaking standpoint. Just so artistic and kind of anti-hero and so kind of different and unique and just so, cinematically amazing. And so that kind of probably was the one that kind of lit my fuse. It's interesting. I kind of have the two sides of my brain. I'm an entrepreneur. I own a business. I've had a business, a production company that I started 19 years ago when I was 25 years old. And I've been very fortunate to have a successful career directing big TV commercials for major ad agencies and big brands through that company that I started. So I have kind of two sides of my brain. And when I was, that are both of interest to me, the kind of more logical kind of business kind of side of me, and then the kind of more creative side to me. So when I was in high school, I played sports and did all that stuff, and also did pretty well at academics and whatnot. And my plan, I worked for law firms when I was in high school for some, family and friends who were kind of successful attorneys in town. And my plan was like to go to law school. So I kind of went off to film school as like, I can go study whatever I want for undergrad, and then I'll just go to law school and, make that lawyer money. And so I was like, on a lark, so not completely on a lark. I mean, I went to NYU. It wasn't like, there wasn't some thought to it, but I went to film school thinking, I'll do this. This will be a great kind of, fun undergrad experience. And I'll go to law school and end up, being an attorney, maybe an entertainment attorney or something like that. So it wasn't really till I got to film school that I really kind of, jumped in, head first, I guess, into becoming a filmmaker.
Yeah. You hung around law firms and still wanted to be a lawyer? That's just mind blowing to me.
I think that was probably the thing that made me not want to be.
Yeah.
A lot of the family that I worked for and friends that I worked for worked in family law. So so it was pretty heavy stuff. And certainly, they're admirable for doing it because it's a necessary thing. But man, just seeing some of those kind of things unfold, the bickering between people and kind of, families kind of going through the kind of worst moments of their lives kind of made me go, man, I don't think I can handle that kind of heavy stuff.
I worked, I have a law degree, and I worked as a law clerk for a while. I was on the family law docket for a few months. And I did have one like fascinating international custody case that I should probably tell at some point, that story on my Patreon or something, just a really interesting case. But the day-to-day of it is just so crushing, man. And so that is really interesting. And it's interesting that you ended up going the route that you did. I'm curious about the creative side of your brain when you establish your production company and you're doing commercials. And I've heard you talk a little bit about what that process looks like. You spoke with Jack Ingram a little bit about that. But then the thing that I'm kind of curious about, that I'm very curious about, is a feature film like this seems like it would be a very different creative process than those commercials. And I wonder if that occupies a different space in your brain, the creative process of something of this magnitude versus making a commercial. Not to diminish the commercial, but I just mean like the creative headspace and what the difference looks like.
Yeah, I love both forms. Commercials, a lot of people just think of like your typical kind of local car dealership commercial or whatever. There really is an art form to it, and the industry has changed quite a bit. But there are epic, huge budget epic commercials that are every bit as cinematic as a lot of the content, film and television that's being produced today. So I was really inspired by that aspect of it, and I have been fortunate to have a successful career directing commercials. And what I love about it is it's short form. So you get to the process of doing a project and completing a project, is only a few weeks, and so that part is really interesting. And also you just get to kind of hone your skills and get to try different things. So there's a part of me that likes to try a bunch of different things. I'm very project oriented. So I like to complete things. And then like one project might be epic and cinematic. One commercial might be epic and cinematic. The next project for me, because I've been fortunate to dabble in a lot of different genres of commercials, I might do something that's like very improv comedy based the very next thing. And so I get to try these different things and do these different things and work with kind of different set of skills. Not only my own skills, but also work with different artisans. And so it's a really great place to kind of, I've been on set, I've done, thousands of days on set, directing. So when you're making a movie or a television series or whatnot, it can take years to get one off the ground, and you often get to the goal line and something falls apart and you have to start all over again. And so the idea for me of being able to do stuff constantly and continuing to kind of hone my craft and getting to try and experiment with different approaches to stuff and different equipment, even different technology, and the budgets are usually pretty flush. So you get to kind of have, in my case, I've been fortunate to be able to work with some incredible, collaborators and do some fun stuff. So that's the short form stuff is really rewarding in that way. The long form stuff, doing a feature is like a marathon. So there's just a stamina you have to have. We shot the film over 20 days, which is, pretty short in comparison to, major, films, but also kind of fairly standard for like an indie film in this kind of budget range, I would say. Some of them are a little bit longer. But the difference between doing, 3 days on a commercial and you're going, nonstop 15 hours a day, every day, there's huge difference between doing that and then converting that to basically 20-day shoot, which means you're, prepping every day you're down for not shooting. So it's like 30 days of 15 hours plus a day, just nonstop intense focus on a movie. And that stamina is just like a whole different level of engagement and focus that you couldn't really prepare for, I don't think.
Wow. Okay, so let's dive into the film Hard Luck Love Song, which it's just so beautiful and has been such a pleasure to get to watch and dissect. So let me back up for a second, because there's something that happens to me when I watch a film. I didn't get to see this one in theaters yet, but watching a film in a theater sometimes is overwhelming to me. Like it ignites my anxiety. And the anxiety, I think, comes from the fact that making a feature film like this, especially a good one like this, when there's so much that goes into it and so many things that have to go right and so many talented people have to to be on top of their game for something like this to come together as beautifully as it has. There are times when I'll watch a film like this in a theater and just feel like I'll never be able to do something like that. Did you come into it with any sort of like, holy shit, how am I going to do this? Or did you go into it going like, I know how to do this. I know what I'm going to do. What was your like confidence level as you went into this?
Yeah, a little bit of both, I would say. Like I said, I've had a lot of time on set and I've directed a lot of, big projects, short form. So I had the confidence, I had a lot more experience and confidence than, maybe a typical first time director. At the same time, I have that same kind of reaction that you're describing. When I go see a movie by an incredible filmmaker, like it's just mind blowing how they're able to kind of conduct this entire symphony for such a sustained period of time and to get it to really all come together in such a cohesive piece of compelling art. I kind of like to think of filmmaking as like, for me, and maybe I'm wrong here, but for me, it's like, it is like the ultimate art. You're combining all of these different art forms into one thing, right? It's got music, it's got literature, it's got, photography and painting and everything all into one thing. And so getting all of those elements to come together into one, cohesive piece is it's a minor miracle that any movie gets made, period, let alone that it turns out to be good. So yeah, it's a bit overwhelming to think about it. And, I would say I went into it with kind of naive confidence, I think, in some ways. And a lot of it was, probably that stamina thing that I mentioned. It's just, I probably did not, even though I thought about it, I was like, I probably underestimated just how much long period of intense focus that it takes to do this thing. And, you kind of have to just suck it up and do it, and like, kind of learn on from your mistakes as you go, and, probably think about some of those things the next time out, should I get the opportunity to do another one? And I think, confidence is a good thing, but also now that I have one under my belt, there's definitely some things that I learned that I'll carry on to the next one.
What are some of those things that you learned?
It's interesting. Making a movie is very, like I said, very challenging, requires a lot of focus and stamina. And I think there were times where, that maybe I was like, maybe I'm pushing too hard. Maybe I take my foot off the gas and see what happens if I'm not like really grinding and pushing this boulder up the hill. And so there were times where I'm like, man, I'm going to sit back a little bit on this one, on this day, and see if a little maybe looser approach or maybe a little less intense focus maybe gets something else out of it. Maybe there's something there. And unfortunately I found that that's not the way, for me at least. Like taking your foot off the gas a little bit, resulted in times where I'm probably like wish I had pushed a little harder, or wish I had put in extra time or extra hours to try to perfect something, or maybe been, just kind of raise the expectations on certain things, that maybe I was like, oh, I've got it. We'll coast through on this day and I'll recover. And then tomorrow, the next day will be another day I can kind of focus back in. And I just don't think it works that way in filmmaking. I think every day you have to be as locked in as you could possibly be and push as hard as you can push to get the desired outcome.
Wow, that's really interesting, because I think about the analogy of sports and like a great coach. John Calipari always says that he just surrounds himself with the best players, and of course he knows the game, but he's like, I just go out and get the best players I can, and then I do my best to like turn them loose and let their talent shine. And you've got, Michael Dorman and Sophia Bush in this are just both, and the chemistry between them is just incredible, jumps off the screen. You've got such an amazing cast, so many talented people. The source material is obviously really rich, and then you've done this wonderful thing with it. So it's interesting to me to think about like you as a director and producer, like how you how you put your foot on the gas in that way, right? In terms of like trying to get the best out of these people but also getting out of the way enough to be like, I got Michael Dorman and Sophia Bush, right?
Yeah,
like
yeah.
how do you
No,
strike that balance?
they're remarkable. But like, just to give you an example of how that applies is like, we have this amazing, I mean, Michael Dorman and Sophia Bush, obviously, or the movie is built around the chemistry between them and this history that's between them. And they're amazing in the movie. So, and I can go on and on about that, and I will. But just to give you an example of like foot on the gas is like, when the agents or the casting directors, and our casting directors were very supportive, but people are like, no, you're not going to be able to get like a name actor for one of these supporting roles. You're just going to have to get like a great character actor that nobody's ever heard of, yada, yada, yada. And my foot on the gas is like, no, I really want somebody like Dermot Mulroney for this Rollo character, or I really want Eric Roberts, or, people kind of laughed at me when I said, I want RZA for this role. And so like being able to like, I don't know, I have champagne taste and beer budget, although I actually mostly drink beer, but really kind of I have high expectations. So that's kind of what I'm saying about the foot on the gas stuff, is just like not taking no for an answer and going, yeah, I know we don't have the money. I know it's a small movie. I know that it's only a supporting part or whatever, but this is really what will make this really come to life. And we have to at least go ask for it and beg, borrow, and steal to make it happen. And that's kind of more, I guess, my approach to kind of grinding and foot on the gas. But, yeah, absolutely. The magic happens, and I think the script was in a really good place, but the magic happens for me when, I'm standing there next to the camera and I'm watching Michael Dorman and Sophia Bush kind of waltz around the room singing Can't Complain, and just watching the kind of tension lift between their characters, and then a new tension kind of present itself after he's done playing the song. And just like watching those kind of undulations of feelings that happen between people who've known each other and are that kind of intimate with each other, like being able to watch that happen in the scene while we're shooting it, like it's magic. And I'm, I have so much respect for actors. They're just so talented. And, in lesser hands, that scene doesn't work the way that it works, and so the chemistry they were able to develop and that kind of history that they were able to develop in these characters is just, when you see it happen, and like, I mean, I'm watching it on set and I know, I'm like, holy shit, this is very powerful stuff. This is going to make the movie. You get, a couple scenes like that and you have something memorable. And so, yeah, you definitely don't step in and try to slow that down or anything. You kind of give broad notes, and then you let them kind of, you let them do their thing. You give some broad notes, and then you watch them kind of keep working at it till it just comes to life. And man, they did. So.
Oh, that's great. That's great. So what does the screenplay process look like for you when you sat down to write this? Or is that like you're a busy man, you got a lot of stuff going on? Or was it like you carved out time each day to do it? Were you fully dedicated to this particular project in terms of the writing process? Did the writing come over a period of time? Like, what did the process of writing this look like?
That's a good question. It actually went really fast. And I was very busy with commercials at the time. And that was one reason that I wanted to bring in a friend of mine named Craig Ugeritz, the co-writer, to write the screenplay with me. Jumping back to how the kind of creative and writing process happened, literally Allison Smith, my wife and producing partner, and I were in Austin. We were watching Todd play a show, and he started the first few bars of this song, and I turned to her and I just said, hey, remind me to tell you of an idea that just popped into my head about a small contained indie that we could do based on this song. And she sort of rolled her eyes at me, because I'm probably always, popping off ideas like that, some of them come to fruition and some don't. But I'd say within 2 weeks, I had a full-blown kind of treatment, which is like a short story, basically, a version of this, with a whole lookbook put together with a bunch of incredible still photographs that I thought set the tone of kind of what we want the film to look like. a bunch of William Eggleston photos. If anybody's familiar with William Eggleston, he's somebody who kind of a photographer that really inspires me in a lot of ways, but definitely for this movie. And so, yeah, within a couple of weeks, I had that. Another week or two, I was meeting with Todd, pitching it to him to get his sign off and go ahead. And then I brought in my buddy Craig, who's a great screenwriter, to kind of work with me on the screenplay. And he and I batted it back and forth. And one of the reasons I wanted to bring him in was somebody who wasn't maybe as close to Todd's work and catalog, but also a way to kind of help me kind of, do my day job and direct commercials and do some other things at the same time, so I could kind of pay the bills and squirrel away money so we could get this movie kind of developed and going. And so, yeah, he was a great collaborator for that. And we kicked it back and forth for, I think, a couple months, basically. And, all said and done, I think within 4 months, we had this script in actors' hands. And from seeing Todd play the song, the spark of an idea, 4 months later, we have the script in actors' hands, and we're talking about, possible shoot dates and stuff like that. So it was a very accelerated process.
That's so exciting. That's so fun. The spot. I mean, I can totally relate to everything about having that idea, watching someone like Todd play, who's one of the all-time great show people. Like, I mean, anybody who's listening to this, if you haven't seen Todd yet, and I'm sure a lot of you have, go see Todd. He's like the best stand-up comedian in the world, and the most wonderful storyteller, and the most incredible songwriter. He just has the whole package. He commands a stage. Just him and a guitar and a microphone is just unbelievable. But I'm curious about work. So many things here. One, I can completely relate to, you're in that moment and you get inspired by someone else's art. So many times, like I just wrote a couple verses to a song after finishing a book, and I just like S.A. Cosby's Razor Blade Tears. I finished, and I just like immediately went, there's this one character I want to write about. And it's so exciting to see someone else's art and let that inspire your own. I can also relate to, I would turn to my partner and tell her the idea, and she would roll her eyes like, of course you have an idea. And we'll see what that looks like, and if it comes to fruition, and what it looks like on the other end. But I'm wondering about about working with Todd himself. Like, I've had the great pleasure of interviewing him. One of my favorite episodes of the Marinade is with Todd. I asked Will Kimbrough about working with him as a producer. And with music, that's a little bit different. When you came to Todd with this idea, can you talk a little bit about how much he was involved in sort of that process, and what it was like, talking to Todd in that moment?
Yeah, I think it kind of evolved over time. The first time I went out and just, I got in touch with his manager, Bert. I didn't know Todd personally at the time. I had met him a handful of times, been to a million shows, met him a handful of times, had some mutual friends and stuff like that. And I got in touch with Bert, his manager, and was like, hey, I've got this idea. I'd love to sit down with Todd about it. And so, this was literally 2 weeks after seeing him in Austin, that I went, got in touch with Bert basically. And then we kind of kicked around some dates that I could meet with Todd. It happened to be in Portland. He was doing 3 nights in Portland, where he's from originally. And so he's going to be there for a bit. So went out and met with him. He was like, they had rented a house that they were staying in for the week or whatever. And brought the whole kind of pitch thing. He kind of thumbed through it as I was like kind of pitching him kind of the rundown of the story. He gave him a little backstory on kind of who I was and where I came from, and then kind of walked him through kind of what the story was. I think as musicians get approached by people all the time that want to do stuff and say they're going to do X, Y, or Z. And it happens in the film industry too. People are constantly like, hey, you should check out my book, or, hey, I want to, collaborate with you or whatever. So I think there was some skepticism from him, probably. I didn't feel that at all the first day that I pitched it to him. He was just like excited and on board. He's like, fuck yeah, let's do this. And I think he realized, that I really knew the catalog and the source material, and that I was going to bring kind of a certain level of expertise to not just, kind of this new piece of inspired art, but also bring these other elements of kind of some of his other work and kind of his storytelling and some of his other things to the film, and make the film, a real celebration of him and of troubadours in general. So I think he understood that, that he was in good hands with me kind of taking on this song and developing it into this kind of new piece. And then from there, I started working on the script, and I would kind of meet with him every once in a while and kind of go over stuff with him. I'd run into, I'd be in the same town he was playing and see him at shows and hang out and stuff like that. Went out to Nashville one time and kind of went through some script stuff with him. And he was, for the most part, really hands off in that aspect of it. I think, he's busy dealing with his own stuff and touring, and he was mostly playing with the Hardworking Americans kind of at that point. It was right up until, he started kind of doing his, the Cash Cabin sessions and back to kind of doing his own solo stuff. So it was like kind of in that period. But the whole time, it was just keep going from him and his team. And, at some point, right before we shot the film, Michael Dorman and I flew out to Asheville, North Carolina on a red eye, which is a funny story I could tell you.
Please do.
Okay. So Michael's in town doing something. We're going to go we're going to go see Todd in Asheville, North Carolina. We take a red eye. I sleep on the plane. Thankfully, Michael doesn't sleep at all. We land in Atlanta, and our flight to Asheville is, I think either we were delayed and missed it, or it's canceled or something. And so we had to fly to South Carolina. So we flew to like Spartanburg or whatever that airport is in South Carolina, which was kind of a neat moment because there's some musician friends of my mom who are from there. Walter Hyatt and Champ Hood and those guys are all from there. So it was kind of neat to land there. But anyways, we had to take an Uber from South Carolina to North Carolina so we could make it to the show. We end up like Michael, we pull over. It was the lady's first Uber ride she'd ever get, and she was crossing state lines to do it. We pretty quickly pulled over and got 12-pack of beer or something at the gas station, and started pre-gaming a little bit, I'd say. And then we had to check into this like funky motel in Asheville with this like kind of I don't know, he's some frontier cowboy kind of thing in Asheville. I don't know if you've ever seen this hotel. It's like this rundown motel. And
I think I've stayed at that rundown motel.
Yeah.
Like it's like I wish I could think of the name of it. I think I stayed there and almost lost a girlfriend over it because she was so pissed at me.
Yeah, and there's like a foot of green water in the bottom of the pool, and that kind of vibe. And so, which was like perfect. And then we went and saw this amazing show. Got to hang out with Todd before the show, and Michael got to meet him and spent some time on the tour bus with him and all that. And then watched an incredible show. So, and then literally had to fly out the next morning to get back to stuff obligations we had in Los Angeles. So was this just fast and furious red eye to the wrong state, Uber ride to rundown motel, and then incredible show, which kind of pitch perfect Todd Snider experience, and kind of definitely informed kind of where we were going with the film and stuff.
Oh, that's such a great story. I love it. Will you indulge the fanboy in me for 2 seconds and tell me what it's like drinking beer with Michael Dorman?
Michael Dorman's amazing. He's such a talented actor and such a just good-hearted dude. It was, we were looking for a needle in a haystack. We needed an incredible actor who could also play music and sing and who could also shoot pool. And man, he delivered. The guy's an animal, and he just brought it, man.
That's awesome. That's so great. One more fanboy question. What about the RZA? Because I feel like I don't get starstruck really. I'm lucky. I get to talk to my heroes all the time. My whole catalog with this podcast is full of people that I've been listening to for 20 years or more, that I, grew up listening to and consuming their art. But the fucking RZA, that's a different level, man. Like, what was it like directing the RZA?
Yeah, that was a kind of dream come true. I think almost everybody was kind of starstruck. Even Sophia Bush, who's this, huge mega TV star, she told the story that the first concert she ever went to, on her own without her parents or whatever was a Wu-Tang Clan show. So she was feeling it, and yeah, it was incredible. He's a director also. So he's this music genius. He's a director in his own right. He's directed some great films. And then also just every time I saw him, do kind of like a little small part in a film, he's so charismatic and just has so much kind of energy and glow that comes off of him that he's always enthralling on screen. So I knew he would be great. And he and I really vibed over the idea of music as storytelling. And so he read the script and really wanted to do it. He liked the role, but he was like, even more like impressed with the concept, and the idea of taking a song and turning it into a feature. And so we got together and talked about like how to make the role really kind of layered and nuanced and dynamic, and, really kind of bring that out. And he did some incredible work there. And then also, just talking about music as storytelling, and he's sitting there like rapping Wu-Tang lyrics to me over dinner, and like us dissecting kind of the storytelling elements of it together. And it was just mind-blowing and incredible.
That's amazing.
Yeah, that was amazing. Something I'll never forget for sure. And then on set, he's just such a pro. He's directed big, pretty heavy action stuff we're doing. And, which was really complicated stuff, especially, it's not just like two people, it's like a whole, group of people. So it's hard to pull that stuff off and make it feel dynamic and interesting, and not just have some people just standing there watching it, so there's a real choreography that goes to it. And the stunt team was really great in helping kind of get that choreographed. But yeah, I'll never forget, we were, Sophia and I were going through some stuff, trying to work out the mechanics of some of the, not the fight stuff so much, but some of the kind of relationship dynamic stuff. And, we have all this heavy lifting to do from an action standpoint. And RZA just comes up and he's like, all right, let's dance. And
that's what he said. He actually said, let's dance.
Yeah. He said, all right, let's dance. And so away we went. And, I just had to, really, we had a lot to do and short amount of time to do it. It was the shortest night of the year. So we didn't have a lot of time before the sun was going to come up. And we just had to like crank through all this like super intense fighting scenes and action scenes and all the other stuff. So yeah, it was, it was a fast and furious dance for sure.
Let's dance. I can just picture him saying it. Like, he's so cool. I can just picture
him saying
it.
So cool the way he did it too.
Oh, that's great, man. Why? So Todd's catalog is rich, and the stories are rich. There's so. Why do you think Just Like Old Times hit you in that moment as source material for a feature film? Why that instead of? I mean, you could probably choose, half that album, and that's just one album.
Yeah, it was one of these situations where we had developed this other project, this other film, this kind of private detective Texas set film noir that we were casting, and we had several instances where we had some kind of well-known actors attached to do it. And we we're going to go forward and do it, but it's a little bit bigger of a project, so it required a little bit more financing and stuff. And this thing just seemed like, because the song all takes place in a motel room, I was like, hey, this can be contained. We could do something that's contained, but also has all this like rich, kind of character stuff. And so that was the initial idea, was like, hey, we can make this kind of contained. We have the financing lined up for this other project that's a little bit bigger, but we can maybe pivot to this one, which is a little bit more contained and smaller, and just make it happen. And so that was like the initial idea, was like, there's all this framework for rich character stuff, but also in a contained kind of environment. And then I started writing the story and writing the script, and it kind of got a little bit bigger than what I originally kind of thought would be super contained. And it's still moderately contained. I'd say 40% of the movie takes place in and around the rundown motel, like it does in the song. But the song is so perfect from an inspiration standpoint, because it's got this framework of stuff that can be expanded upon, right? So in the song, Todd says, I won a tournament down in Oklahoma City last week, hustled half this town tonight. And like he says a little bit more than that regarding pool, like one other line maybe, but that's almost all he says about pool playing. But so like for me, I'm like, wait a minute, let's that could be what happens in the first act. Let's go figure out, who this person is, what he's done to get from point A to point B, and then what's going to happen, as he goes to point C, because, you set him up in the first act, you got to knock him down in the third. Right. So it just lent itself to that. There was this economy in the song of like this one line that talks about him hustling people in pool, right? And so then my kind of creative brain gets spinning is like, well, who are these people that he hustled? What was the circumstances in which he hustled them? How did he get out of this situation? If they were, wise to it and maybe dangerous, how did he get out of that situation? And are they going to come looking for him if he did do that? And so that was kind of the essence of how we could set up this kind of danger in the first act and then kind of have those chickens come home to roost in the third act. And then the song is really the core of the song takes place in the second act, right? Mm-hmm. So there's also the other thing about the song that's so incredible is there's also, and again, it's this economy. There's so much backstory that's just hinted at in the song that I was able to use as backstory in the film too. He mentions New Orleans in the song, but we don't know that much about New Orleans. But so I was able to use that as like, okay, here's this moment that happened between them in New Orleans that was like this kind of last time that they, saw each other, and this kind of blow up that happened. And like, that's going to be, this thorn in, them reuniting at this moment, among other things. Right. But, so like those sort of things just allowed for that kind of rich backstory and history between the characters that it's hinted at in the song. And what's great about the song is that it lets the audience kind of imagine those things, but it doesn't really spell those things out. And I kind of took the same approach for the movie. I didn't fully spell all those things out. I also let some of those things kind of left it up to the imagination of the audience, but I fleshed them out more than obviously what's fleshed out in one line of a song, to give just some more kind of more protein to chew on for the film audience, basically.
Right, exactly. There's the economy to the song, but there's also an economy in telling such a rich story in a film like this. You could have made this a whole series, really. There's so much that could have gone into it, and you're able to tell the story in such a short amount of time. You have to also, I would imagine, be aware of that economy in your own writing.
Yeah, totally. And that's one of the things you kind of touched on this earlier, and I didn't probably connect these dots, but like, doing commercials, you're confined to such a short amount of time. So that art of being able to like quickly tell a story in a short amount of time and to hit certain beats that you need to hit is something I definitely, was able to develop, doing commercials. Now we kind of took a little bit of a different approach with this movie to some extent. In that it's like a slow, especially the first half of the movie is very much like kind of a slow burn. Like, let's just live with this character and kind of feel his kind of vibe. And it's, I kind of think of it as a rubber band, you're kind of pulling it back slowly. You got to do that in order for it to really kind of, the tension to rocket it forward in the end, so, but yeah, this, obviously, and I had a good friend of mine in Austin who, came to the premiere we did in Austin, and he was like, I could watch a whole series of, this guy just out living his life, hustling people in pool, trying to play music, getting into trouble, and so, yeah, I think the modern approach is that, and I think this character and this world is so rich that you could kind of expand in those ways, and it could be something, there's kind of a hang, it's kind of a hang. You're hanging with Jesse in the first, third of this movie, and getting to watch him and go along the ride, really experience these kind of adventures that he's kind of going on. Some of them are slow and lonely, and some of them are a little bit more adrenaline packed. And I think that's kind of how life is. So we tried to kind of capture that.
Well, yeah, you're going on this hang with Jesse, and he's such a mess, but he's also so likable, and he's so talented in so many ways, and he's so human. You can connect with him on different levels, even though he's in many ways just absolutely outstanding in a way that I won't be able to grasp, but also really, really low in ways that I hope to never sink to, And so I love that about him. You do, and I love the way you built that tension, because you do become so invested in him. And then when the rubber band does snap, it's like, oh man, I am in this. Like, let's go for this ride.
Yeah, thanks. Yeah, that was kind of that was what we were going for sure. I think there are people, there are people who kind of don't have the highs and lows. They're kind of live in kind of the middle channel that, most of, polite society, is I'll kind of jokingly refer to them, lives. And then there are people who, kind of have a little bit more of those ups and downs, and they seek adventure and kind of live close to the edge. And there's lots of fun that goes along with that. But then there's those kind of dark, low moments that are the flip side of that. The candle burns bright, but it burns out at some point, so that was one of the things where I was really exploring here was like, Townes Van Zandt says the sake of the song, or Todd refers to the Aaron Allen story, which I think is just such an amazing story, is like, to write good songs, there's this idea that you kind of need to live close to the edge and be prepared to pack up all your shit in 15 minutes and get out of whatever situation you find yourself in. And you have to kind of force yourself to do that in order to kind of stay connected with, kind of real life and humanity and what's going on in the world. So you can kind of channel that into your art. And so there's a long tradition of troubadours kind of doing that. I think Todd even talked about on your podcast, like Jerry Jeff told him to, seek adventure and, all that kind of stuff. And, I know Todd has done that. I kind of try to do that myself, in a moderated way, but I try to do that myself as a creative person. But so I think that was like one of the kind of concepts here was like, get the highs and the lows. And you see somebody kind of really kind of leaning into that kind of troubadour lifestyle and really embracing that. And you get to see kind of the damage it does to, not only to themselves, but also to the relationships that they have with people. And, if you're going to pack up your bag in 15 minutes and split, people can't really count on you all the time. And that kind of, you burn bridges with people, and maybe that's what's needed for the art, or maybe it's not. Maybe having those personal relationships with people that they know they can count on you, maybe that's equally important or important in a different way. And so it's sort of a coming of age story, like a arrested development, stunted growth kind of coming of age story for this guy. But we don't really resolve it. We don't know where it's gonna go when it's all said and done. But yeah, I mean, Michael Dorman is so charismatic and flawed at the same time in this role. The Jesse character has kind of both sides of the coin. And that's something, I feel that personally myself in many ways. And also I've experienced that with other creative folks. It's sometimes when they're in their good place, it's amazing to be around them and the most fun you'll ever have. And sometimes when they're in a mood or they're, off in their down period, they're like miserable to be around. And so we wanted to kind of explore that and kind of, I think, as a selfish artist, I kind of wanted to examine artists being selfish and like how it kind of affects other people in their lives. And is that fair, or does their art warrant that, or does it not warrant it? Why do artists like myself even get to be self-absorbed and selfish with putting my art first over other things? And, I don't know the answers to that, but I thought it was a good question to at least pose.
Yeah, I 100% agree. I mean, I think that, and I think I like that there's a conversation about the idea of the tortured artist these days, and like how so many folks are not necessarily living this Townes Van Zandt type life. They're experiencing life, but they're doing it in a much more responsible and a much healthier way. Steve Earle talks about like how much he loves Townes, but like that he doesn't want him to be overly romanticized because he was such a mess, and there were so many problems with Townes, for example, and we could do that about so many different artists. And I love that you referenced that thing that Todd said to me about what Jerry Jeff said, because Todd was really nuanced in that. And he really talked about how like he still tries to seek out those experiences, but like how he was pretty vulnerable in that moment, talking about how like it is a balance, like you got to make the gig and you got to make sure you're maintaining your relationships. And sometimes that gets in the way. It's always amazed me that Todd has managed to remain so well respected by everybody around him and live such a wild life. It just blows my mind.
Well, he's so prolific too. That's the part, that's the part that blows my mind. And even I think some of his peers and friends, are blown away by that too. He's so prolific. I mean, it's insane how much great work he's put out there, and the songs and the storytelling and the book. I mean, the book is amazing. Like, it's just I think he gets up early and works early in the morning, which is what a lot of creative people do, I guess. But man, I go out and roar on the weekend, and I have to kind of lock it in and not do that. I couldn't imagine being on the road all the time. and I know he talked about it, and a lot of musicians talk about it. It's just so discombobulating. Sometimes my job does that to me too, where, there are months on end where I'm on the road shooting stuff, sometimes doing commercials, and man, it's discombobulating to not know what day or time it is and live out of a bag for that. I couldn't imagine doing that as a touring musician, the road dog. It's just, it could only lead to trouble for me, I would imagine.
Yeah, me too. I don't think I'm geared for it. That aspect of the life isn't talked about enough. It seems so romantic, but it's just so hard. A couple of more things I wanted to talk to you about, and one of them is the Easter eggs in the film. There's so many great, especially for folks who like this show and like the things we talk about on this show. There's so many fun moments. A lot of them I didn't catch until I started to listen to interviews, and on your social media for Hard Luck Love Song, there was a John Prine lyric and that I didn't catch. There's all kinds of things I didn't catch. Is Carla named after the song and The Devil You Know?
Yes.
Okay.
Definitely.
Okay, cool. Yeah, there's a lot of really fun things like that.
There's for Todd ones, there's dozens. I can't even probably keep up with them all, or I lost count. Todd and his whole kind of inner circle, they couldn't keep up with them all. There were too many. That's interesting. Todd's super fans, the Shithouse Choir, I think they find new ones every time they watch it, and they're posting about, oh, did you see this? Oh, did you see that? And some other ones. So yeah, there's just dozens, if not over 100 Todd related ones. And then there's also just tons of other kind of music related ones, and even some other film related ones too, things that are were important kind of touchstones for me as a creative that I kind of embedded in this thing. There's a ton. So that one social media post you're talking about, where the John Prine one was there, if you look in the hashtags, we hinted towards some other ones that might be a good kind of treasure map to finding some of the other ones. And so that might be
that's fun
for some people.
That's fun. Cool. Very cool. Yeah, I didn't pick up on that. That's great. Gosh, this has been so much fun, man. We usually end on what you're getting down on. So the art that has you inspired at the moment. It could be a record you're listening to, or a painting you saw, or a film, or a book, just something that you've consumed lately or are consuming that you're excited about.
And I've listened to your podcast, so I was thinking about that question quite a bit. It's interesting. I've just been so nose to the grindstone on this thing that I haven't really been able to kind of absorb a bunch of other things at the same time, because I've just been so kind of occupied with it. There's a handful of things for sure. I'm constantly listening to music and stuff like that. But I haven't been reading any books lately. I've literally been shot out of a cannon the past month, basically going around, screening this thing and doing media and stuff like that. But yeah, there's a handful of things for sure that I went to Americana Fest, so I got to see a bunch of great music there, and I'm such a live music fan, so I had not been able to go see live music for the past 2 years or year and a half or whatever. So it was really great to be able to go out and see live music. And that show that Todd and Jack Ingram put on at the Ryman during Americana Fest was just amazing. And I got to see Langhorne Slim and Patrick Sweeney, Hayes Carl, Trey Burt, Sarah Shook, and Lily Hyatt. I got to see all little shows from them during kind of Americana Fest. That was amazing. That Trey Burt album, that new Trey Burt album, is just amazing. I've been listening to that quite a bit. Hayes has a new album that's about to come out, and there's some great stuff that's been released already on that. I laugh every time there's that song You Get It All, that I think is the title track of the album, I think. And there's a line where he says, "You get all my old Guy Cart cassettes," and I laugh every time I hear that one. So that's been fun. And then Shovels and Rope has a new thing that's dropping. I think I heard a single today that sounded amazing.
Comes out in February, I think.
Yeah. So that I'm looking forward to that. I'm really looking forward to going. There's a couple of movies coming out this weekend. I'm looking forward to going to see the new Wes Anderson French Dispatch. I want to see that.
Yeah.
And then Dune. I'll probably go see Dune. I really like Denis Villeneuve, the filmmaker, a lot. So I'll probably go see Dune to get that big kind of epic theater experience. And then something that kind of hit home for me recently. It's not a new song or anything, but I was in Austin. We did on opening night, we did like a little premiere thing in Austin where I'm from, and a bunch of family and friends came out, some of my oldest, dearest friends. And when I got back to LA, because we basically did it out on Friday, and then we flew out Saturday morning, came back to LA to do it all over again here in LA with some of the actors and some of the crew and stuff from the movie. There's this band called The Record Company I really dig a lot. And they have this song called The Movie Song. And I had heard it before, and I liked it and never thought too much about it or whatever. I enjoyed it, but hadn't thought about it. But after spending that time in Austin with my people, getting to hear that, listen to that song on Saturday, kind of as like a little pregame before I hopped in the Nova to drive over to the LA premiere, that song really kind of hit home for me. It's kind of a cool song. It's totally kind of just, it's like reminding you about the good old days and getting together with your friends like nothing's changed. And that one really kind of hit me hard, like right before going to do the big LA premiere at the big Grove Theater and all that kind of stuff. So like just getting to remember kind of where I come from and my good buddies and getting to see them Friday night in Austin, that song kind of tied it all together for me. So that was great.
That's cool, man. Yeah, the record company played Gasparilla Music. They put on such a great show. They played Gasparilla Music Festival a few years ago. I went in cold. I didn't know really anything about them, and immediately was like, oh yeah, I'm into this. Were you at the Trey Burt show that was in Cannery Row right before Great Peacock played?
I went to the one at it was the Oh Boy 40th anniversary party where basically their whole,
that's fun. Kelsey and
the whole roster of artists played. Yeah, I went to that one. Got to see Trey. Got to see Arlo McKinney. I think another one of their artists. I think is his name. Anyways, got to see Trey, and that was amazing. His new album.
It's
so new album's super cool. And he's about to play here in LA at this place called Gold Diggers, where Leon Bridges just recorded his last album. So I'm going to go see Trey at Gold Diggers, I think, next week or something like that, I think. So that'll be cool.
Nice. Very nice. I thought that was really cool, this story you told on Jack's podcast about the hotel and how you chose it because of the Leon Bridges video.
Yeah, man, that was very fortuitous to be able to discover that video and find that motel. I love that song, and that video is great. And Leon Bridges is incredible. Like one of the last shows I saw before COVID. Now I've been out to some live shows, but one of the last live shows I saw before COVID was Charlie Crockett at the Troubadour. And I felt this presence. I was standing like right next to the stage on the side. I felt this presence behind me. I turned around and there's Leon Bridges decked out like head to toe in this incredible custom like Western suit with his hat tipped down. And I was like, holy shit, there's Leon Bridges.
Leon Bridges looking like Leon Bridges.
Yeah, doing Leon Bridges things. And then next thing I know, he's up on stage doing Waiting Around to Die, the Townes Van Zandt song. And then for the encore, he got up with Charlie Crockett, and they did a whole, mess of songs. And it was incredible. Good way to good last show to see before things locked down. And now I'm glad that live music's out in the world again, and I'm able to go see it.
That's great, man. Justin, thank you so much. This was such a pleasure. Thank you for the film Hard Luck Love Song. Thank you for your time, energy right now. Thank you for listening to the Marinade. That made my night to hear that you've been listening to the show. I just really greatly appreciate all of this. This was too much fun, and I hope folks are able to go out and see this wonderful film and rave about it online so we can all chat about it.
Yeah, thanks, Jason, so much. It's a challenging time for indie film and independent music. So, shows like this are kind of doing the Lord's work to some extent, kind of helping spread the word. So, like, I just encourage everybody, go out there and hear independent music, go out there and see independent film, and kind of support artists. So I think it's the only way forward. We'll keep this stuff kind of going, is if audiences really kind of get behind it. So it's time to get back out there.
Well said, man. Thank you so much again. Have a wonderful rest of your day, dude.
You too, Jason. Thanks, man.
Thank you.
Justin Corsbie, thank you so much, Justin. Thank all of you for listening.
hardlucklovesong.com for all things Hard Luck Love Song. Y'all, check out the film. It's wonderful. If you like this show, you're going to love that movie. It was so much fun to pick Justin's brain about how this gorgeous piece of art came to life. It's one thing to make a podcast or an album, or all of those things take a lot of work, and any creative work I certainly respect. But man, a film, it's just incredible to me that people have that kind of vision and are able to bring it to life. And I'm so glad that Justin was so open about his process. Y'all, again, check out the film. MarinadePodcast.com for all things The Marinade, including written pieces. I've been writing just about once an episode at least, which is averaging about once a week. I've been posting a new review under 2, which I'll get to in a second. Also have photography over there, our online store, which is bare right now, but I'm working on some new merch and more. Follow us on Instagram and Twitter. We've really had, especially lately, quite a few interactions on Twitter of various sorts, and it continues to grow, the social media presence of the show. And I'm really grateful for that, because I feel like I've made so many connections. I was just reflecting on that recently, the relationships that I've built through this show that I didn't expect. It's been super fun. Subscribe and give us a 5-star rating on your podcast app. Tell a friend about the show. These are all free ways to support us. If you really like The Marinade and what we're doing, consider joining our Patreon community. It's just a few bucks a month, and you get exclusive content. It's a lot of fun, too. We have quite the community over there. So as little as $2 a month, you can support us. Every little bit helps, and it all goes right back into the show. I'm right now recording into a microphone that I purchased with funds that we raised over on Patreon. Got to get a new computer. This one's about to quit on me, so I've been saving up for that. And so thank you so much to folks who contribute over there. If you can swing it, we would love to have you. If not, just thank you so much for listening to the show. We really, really appreciate it. All right, y'all, it's time for our review under 2, where I review some work of art that has me fired up in under 2 minutes. This episode's review is the forthcoming record, The Way Down, from our friend Van Plating, which will be available on November 19th, 2021. Van Plating's forthcoming record, The Way Down, is top-shelf bourbon served neat on the back deck at twilight. Its complexities are immediately apparent, but it's still best enjoyed with slow, rapt attention and an awareness of the context. Van Plating spent her 20s playing and singing in indie rock bands. When her band Pemberley broke up, she decided to take some time off from touring and making records. And then life happened, and a little time off turned into years. But once the need to create, the pang that pushes one to make beautiful things enters the system, it never leaves. Like a blood flute quietly doing its work, the need to make art will rear its head even decades after the first bug arrives. Plating's 2019 self-titled record was the manifestation of the creative bug pushing itself from the cocoon. The Way Down, set for release on 11/19/21, is where the butterfly takes flight. A decade of reflection and growth baked into a collection of songs that celebrates the person Plating has become and is becoming. So often we think of creative change in terms of rebound or redemption, an artist who overcame addiction or who was left for dead by the industry. In the case of Van Plating's The Way Down, the change is not a return from oblivion. It is a leap back into a life that was always there, percolating just below the surface of a normal, quote-unquote, existence. The spiritual center point of the record is the final track, Oxygen. It's a song about the loss and recovery of love. Its imagery is stark and powerful, with the ocean setting the stage for an examination of what it means to lose something essential and recover it through perseverance. Whose side are you on? My wings are made to soar, she sings. Oxygen is the second song on the record to mention wings, the appearance of which nods both to Van Plating's complicated relationship with the church and her determination to rise above the noise. Who should make art? How and when should it be made? Throughout The Way Down, Plating decides the answers to those questions on her terms. Oxygen is a fitting closer to the record. With little more than 3 chords and an acoustic guitar, Plating makes clear she may have a hard time breathing at points in her life, but on this record, her creative airways are clear. That's our review under 2 for The Way Down by Van Plating, coming out on November 19th. Thank y'all again for listening. Thank you so much to our guest, Justin Corsbie. Go out and see the film. Until next time, go out and create something. Cheers, y'all.